Hello and welcome back to Scaling Europe show presented by Deel. I'm Sid Johnson. Today I'm joined by none other than Tyler Edwards, co-founder and CEO of Overmind, who's got very exciting news today. What's going on? What's the news?
Today we are officially, I guess, coming out of semi-stealth. We're announcing a release of our product and the seed round that we've just closed. So yeah, it's a big day for us.
Amazing. Tell me about the seed round. How much? Who's getting involved?
Yep, so we raised 2 million in total. It's led by Osni Capital. So they are a cyber-focused fund based out here in the UK, supported by a number of other funds. So Portfolio Ventures, 14 Peaks, Endurance Ventures and Antler, can't forget Antler, a range of different funds. I guess the objective here was to stack the team quite well. So Osni, very cyber-focused. We're obviously building in the security industry. But we also wanted some generalists to come in. We are an early stage team. We're first-time founders. So we wanted to surround ourselves with some really punchy expertise as we go on this journey.
Nice. Well, look, for those who aren't familiar with Overmind, as you said, you've kind of been operating semi-stealth. What's the 30-second pitch? What is it that you guys have built?
Yeah. So I'll set the scene a little bit. So you're not really going out on a limb to say that agentic AI is clearly on the rise at the moment. And obviously most teams are using it in quite restricted capacity, often like low risk use cases. And this is largely because we lack the necessary tools and infrastructure to ship these things at scale at the moment. So really simply put, Overmind is a runtime security tool that watches your agent, understands its behaviors and patterns of life, captures its mistakes, then uses fine tuning to refine and specialize your model.
Amazing. And you mentioned that you're all first-time founders, but this is like a really interesting team that you've got. I think your background is kind of like building AI tools for MI5, MI6. ACAT is like doing some machine learning stuff for places like Monzo and List. Your CRO Sam has been working in go-to-market at 3 different unicorns. This is like a cracked team, right? Can you touch a bit about? Let's kick off with your experience first, right? Because you've got a really interesting background. How did you get into this space? Why have you decided to solve this problem?
Yeah, of course. So I was in the defense space for about 7 or so years. Came in initially as an engineer, building sort of offensive cyber capabilities, worked across like the Russian, Iranian, Chinese mission, all these sorts of bits. Towards the end of my time there, they started trying to see how they could deploy what was machine learning at the time, but eventually AI into sort of intelligence analytics and other defense capabilities. Famously, government is not great with tech uplift. And they hit all sorts of blockers. They really, really struggled with scaling and implementing it. But weirdly, the exact same problems existed in the commercial world. This sort of massive ambition to deploy this really powerful tech that is utterly transformative, but people really failing / struggling to do so. So actually some of the tech that we used in the defense space, we are deploying into Overmind as a little bit of our secret sauce to get it all working.
Really cool. And how did you know your 2 co-founders?
Yep. So we actually met through the Antler accelerator scheme. So myself and Akat, we met day 1. Annoyingly for Akat, the day he landed on the scheme, I immediately grabbed him. I was like, I've seen your background. I think you're amazing. Let's work together. We stayed married throughout, the entire thing. Towards the end, we realized that we were 2 massive nerds that could build incredible stuff, had never sold a thing in our lives. So it didn't really make sense for us to run like a competitive go-to-market motion. And thus Sam came in. So one of the partners at Antler introduced us to Sam. He was just absolutely incredible. He quit his job before we had like funding, before like any real sort of traction. But it was what sort of helped build confidence in him that, he understands what we're doing. He sees the vision and he's ready to go.
Amazing. And how was that process? How was it going through Antler? What was all that like?
Yeah, it was. I always say I think this has been more stressful than being in MI5. Different kinds of stress, but far more stressful. It was really cool. Met some brilliant people. The partners there have been amazing at supporting us. The people that I met and worked with there are still my friends now. And I obviously come from an environment where I didn't exist, right? I didn't have social media. I didn't have any sort of public presence. So it really allowed me just to like come out of the secretive intelligence world into the arena that is, startup founding.
Amazing. And let's talk about the round, $2 million seed round. What unlocked it? What gave the investors that you have got now on board the conviction that you are the team building the product that they want to back?
Yeah, I think it was a confluence of things. Like you said, the team itself is impressive. You don't really see many teams in this space with our makeup. Usually they're highly academic. not much in terms of sales and enterprise. And you certainly don't see many teams coming out of the defense world and founding. I think obviously most famously Darktrace, obviously founded by previous members from GCHQ. I think for them, the unlock was the way that we looked at the problem. I think AI security at the moment is quite a nebulous area. It can mean a number of different things. We didn't want to build like another enterprise SaaS tool. We just didn't think that was the way to crack the problem. We wanted to build something for developers, for engineers, the people that are being ambitious and brave and building really cool products. So I think that's what helped sort of draw some of that out. And of course, Osni being cyber focused, I think they enjoyed that we were trying to pull away from the pack and not just sell another like monolithic enterprise AI security tool.
Really cool. And I guess like, what is the pitch to companies? When you're going to prospects and clients, what are the real pain points that you're saying, look, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to solve or protect. And what is it that they're finding convincing?
Yeah, well, I think at the moment it depends on the persona. So for security focused teams, it's a lot about that ambition piece. So you want to ship all of these really incredible products, but they're really difficult to manage, to observe, to govern behaviors. So shipping a tool that runs at runtime, it understands how your agent works, it understands the pattern of life, gives you that really hands-on intrinsic understanding of the product you're building. For, I guess, less security-focused teams, it's kind of one of competitive advantage. I guess we come to the point now where AI is a commodity. Saying you use AI is like saying you use the internet, like it's a given. So really what pulls teams apart is how they execute. How do they use AI? One of the things that our product unlocks, which I think is really cool, is it enables teams to ship specialized models. So for context, if you are doing KYC in a bank, for example, your model doesn't need to know the full works of Shakespeare. It just needs to know how to do its job incredibly well. So we can help teams ship these really fast, specialized models that can outcompete generalist models. So it's not just a solve for security. This is about how do we unlock the next era of agentic AI.
Super interesting. And can you touch on, I guess, like any of the success that you've seen so far? Have you been, you've been in semi-stealth. What does that look like? Have you been running it with clients? What success have you seen? Have people really seeing value from it already?
Yeah, so during that semi-stealth period, we kind of worked, I guess, like a pseudo consultancy. So we would find teams doing really cool, ambitious things with AI, and we would kind of work alongside them to understand what the problems were and how we could help. So the number of teams that we've helped ship products now. So one team, they were doing, I guess I need to be slightly aloof about it. They were shipping our product that extracted data from customer input, and then an agent was cascaded some form of automated workflow. At the time when we started working with them, the agent was incorrect 54% of the time. So it wasn't a particularly reliable product. After we came in, we got those numbers up to 94% just through these sort of fine-tuning observability pieces. So really, it was a bit of a symbiotic relationship. We wanted to prove our technical hypothesis that it actually worked, but also make sure we were building something that was, had a repeatable problem statement, it could scale, and was useful to the end user.
Amazing. And what's next? You've raised this money. It's the start of the year. You're going to deploy the capital, ramp up, scale. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I guess the next step is kind of more of the same. We still have a lot of technical hypothesis we need to prove out. This is still a very, very nascent market. We've just really touched the surface of what's happening in AI. Things like Claude Bot that came out recently, constantly new models being released. The ground is moving underneath us. So the first thing we want to do is build a very strong technical team that is excited by the industry, is keeping tabs on what's going on, and is sort of able to react to these massive changes. We have our US trip planned and coming up. We want to explore the market there a little bit. Obviously, very different to the market that exists in Europe at the moment. And then hopefully we want to start expanding beyond just the sort of bottom-up dev role customers at the moment, and start exploring more enterprise adoption. Very different sales motion from selling to engineers, but that's where some of the really exciting projects are happening.
Yeah, I bet. And that's how you crack the big contracts, the higher attention, the real money holders, I guess. Mm-hmm. When you're going out to the US, what's that going to look like? Is that just trying to find people that you can sell to? Is that understanding whether there's appetite for proper market expansion? Are you going to be trying to meeting any investors? What's that going to be like?
Yeah, it's going to be a mixture of the two. So we don't want to sort of go all in and decide that we're going to wholesale ship across to the US, but we do want to get an understanding of what the landscape is like out there. I think for the area we're building in, so dev tools, AI infrastructure, it's a little bit more crowded than in Europe. sort of things are spinning up and getting hyped and coming down again, like within the week. So we want to get an understanding of what that looks like in the US. Take some of those learnings back to the market in Europe as well. From the investor side, so we're obviously already thinking about our Series A. Is something we'd like to do maybe in like a year and a half, a little bit longer. Don't quote me on that. We'll see what happens. But we want to start exploring those US investor relationships as well. Kind of explore how the sell lands over there, what the teams can do to help us scale in that new market. And we just want to start pipping on people's radars. Really, we've been going at this since July of last year. So we've done a lot very quickly, but now we need to start building our profiles, get people knowing who we are, what we're doing, the new kids on the block. So yeah, it's all part of that.
And what advantages do you think you have over the classic sort of like Silicon Valley background, which is often, either ex big tech or ex researcher? You've got a very unique background coming from a sort of like defense space. What advantages do you think that gives you over the more traditional tech background?
Yeah, I do think that. So when we were initially sort of pitching for investment, one of the bits we were told is investors are going to see the same shape of team over and over and over and over again. And what you're going to need more of now is that initial differentiation. Like, what is the story that makes you really, really cool? So even just from that narrative piece, I think coming from the background I do, not just coming from the standard sort of cadence of like big tech or the same universities and institutions, I think changes massively. I think from a technical perspective, in the background I come from, you're constantly being asked to do impossible things in impossible circumstances. Either, build some technology in 24 hours before something catastrophic happens, these sorts of things. I think having that kind of pressure is very different to building commercial products. There is obviously that commercial pressure there, but it manifests in a very different way. I think coming from that environment, as much as I do maintain this is far more stressful, I think I was more prepared than I thought I was going to be for some of the challenges that I've come up against. I think, I've had to pitch to 5-star generals of not so friendly countries. Pitching to VCs was much easier.
Yeah, and that's super interesting. How did you find that process? Because coming from a background which I guess is not, everybody in big tech, everybody who comes from one of the leading model providers, or like your co-founders who have been working in tech for a long time, or specifically like tech as in the VC-backed world. How did you find that transition from, I guess, what's probably a very different environment, probably very structured and maybe high stress and pressure, but you're working for an incredibly old, well-established organization versus, I guess, your co-founders who are much more used to this sort of like scrappy tech life. How did you find that transition?
Yeah, I think there were some things that did remain the same and some things that weren't. So in the government world, commercials, all those sorts of things you just don't care about because it's not part of your sort of daily patter. So I think having to build up my commercial acumen, sort of how I walk the walk, talk the talk in front of customers and VCs was one of the big pieces. In terms of like the scrappiness, again, you are having to be incredibly scrappy in the intelligence world, because most days you're facing problems that no one has faced before. Like an entirely new situation has arisen with an entirely new set of variables and circumstances, and you're just being asked to solve the problem on the spot, which is very much what startup founding is. You all of a sudden have all of these massive problems that you don't really quite know how to solve yet, but they have to be solved. So you just find a way. I think it's that sort of nature that translated very well across to the startup world. I would say the commercial bit was hard. I learned very quickly I was not a good salesperson.
Oh, really?
Which is fine, these things you can learn. But yeah, Sam has really helped bringing him in to build some of that acumen.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's super interesting. Like, as you step into that sort of like that founder role, you all of a sudden are responsible for everything, and you're not going to be great at everything. I guess it's interesting. It's important to learn where your skills kind of are and where they're not.
Yeah.
And how did you find the pitching? Like going out to investors, trying to raise money, because that in itself is a sales process to an extent. You're selling yourself, you're selling the business. How did you find that?
Yeah, weirdly, it was fun to start, let's say. I think me and Sam, we hadn't known each other very long, and all of a sudden we were spending like 90 hours with one another, just constantly pitching to investors. I think we ended up pitching to, I want to say, like 100 different funds throughout October. But it was an interesting process. I think it was sort of quick fire learning. You had to really refine your pitch, really refine your understanding of the landscape, really refine your understanding of the tech and all these sorts of pieces. I think it helped to reflect back what we were building and what we were doing, because you would go through these pitches, the investor would then kind of mirror them back to you. And sometimes you'd think, oh, that's not quite what I wanted to put across in terms of the team, the product, our ambition. So really, I think that whole process was quite useful in us really understanding like who we want to be, what we want to build. But no, it was fun. Maybe not fun, but it was an interesting process, let's say.
Yeah, an experience. And looking forward, you talked a bit about how you're going to deploy that capital. What is it you think you need to achieve, right, before you get to the end of the year, before you get to that next fundraise? Are you thinking in terms of revenue milestones, customer numbers, or is it more about delivering a world-class product? How are you balancing that?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of the two. I think for a team like ours building infrastructure and dev tools, revenue can be a bit of a sort of catfish metric. If you only have like a couple of people using your tool, but they're paying a lot of money, that's not indicative that you've built something transformative. We want to build something that developers absolutely love, that engineers really, really love. We want to initially build that scale of usership, and then we'll start really thinking about revenue conversion. I mean, Sam, again, his whole drive is like, how do we commercialize this thing? How do we drive revenue? So I leave him to really focus on those bits. But I think for me, someone that was a career engineer, I know that these tools only work when like tens of thousands of engineers love them. I mean, teams like, Auth0, Snyk, those sorts of people, that's how they started. They had massive adoption amongst engineers, developers, all the rest. And then they started converting to these sort of very successful revenue models. And we want to follow a sort of a similar cadence. I think because the market is so busy at the moment, you could just release something and the hype around AI would draw attention and eventually people would churn. That's not the company we want to be. We want to enable the future of AI. And to do that, we need to be considered and careful in how and what we build. So we want to build something that, people stick with.
And what's your plan to get those engineers on board, to see that sort of the same go-to-market model that, Snyk and Auth0 saw? What's your way into those engineers?
Yeah, well, part of this recent launch has been a whole rebrand of the company. So as I said, when we started, we were very much focusing on like enterprise SaaS, like enterprise adoption of AI, these sorts of bits. So the way that we looked and field was not appealing to an engineer. So part of it has been taking the shape of a company that engineers will resonate with, either in sort of our cultural references, our logo and our branding is more akin to a dev tool. The second part is kind of what I said, just building something that is genuinely useful. It exists and integrates with the places people are building. It's not bashful. Like, we want to be brave and ambitious with what we want to enable people to do. We want to be opinionated in what we think the future is going to look like. And technologists, engineers, scientists, researchers respect that. They don't want to sit in yesterday's tech stack. They want to, see what crazy things they can do. So a lot of our narrative is like, we don't want to get in the way. We want to take off the brakes, give you cool tools to build stuff. And I think trying to resonate and land that kind of narrative is a good initial play. But really, simply put, build something engineers like, makes their job easy, and they will stick with you.
Yeah, amazing. And it's going to be a great strategy to build product people love, and the rest will follow. Well, look, Tyler, thank you so much for joining me. It's great chatting. I'm super excited to see what you get up to this year. I think what you're building is really interesting, and I'm a huge fan of the founding team that you've put together. So best of luck with it.
Thank you very much. It was great to meet you.